something a little extra.
Okay.
Right. Guys, yeah, if anybody has any particular questions, Philip, do we want to talk about you a little bit?
Yeah, sure. We can. Do you want me to just get started? I just put a background slide.
Oh, you do have a background slide
Yeah,
there.
I do.
Yeah,
So,
I think we can start if you like.
yeah. Okay. So I met Sutton Summit, Sabia, and David Gorski, I guess, back before Christmas through a PR agency that I work with when you guys were dealing about some reputational management issues, if that's okay for me to share.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know if you want to talk about what happened or leave it general.
We'll leave it general.
Yeah, okay. So it was really just dealing with reputation management online, because one of the key points, within a lot that we'll talk today and right at the end is really create your own brand or somebody else will. So not just is this important for marketing your brand and creating differentiation in a crowded market, but it's also about having enough content credibility and kind of depth of your brand so that any reputational damage that may be done online by an individual or an organization is outweighed by all the positives that you have. So that's really how I met this group. My background is working with a lot of large brands. I started in packaged goods marketing. I've worked with some of the world's most recognizable brands like Microsoft, Nabisco Craft, Vodafone overseas. Previous to starting my own agency, I was the managing director of Saatchi & Saatchi. So I'm kind of a big brand guy. I started my agency to do the type of work that tier one agencies do at a more affordable level and allow me to work across a big, broader group of companies. So I work with about 40 different clients at any given time, some heavier than others. I'm also the producer of a show on 105.9 The Region, which is called The Modern Divorce Show, which we just finished our season on, which allows me to put particular clients on there for them to build content and media. And that's something that we'll probably be talking to be about down the road. So I think I'm relatively credentialed. I have worked with some real estate agents by way of the radio programs, as well as mortgage brokers. So I have some understanding of your business, but obviously not to the depth that you guys have. So today I wanted to just run through some simple kind of rules. So I know that you guys are at different levels, as I said, in the beginning. So if you're starting from scratch, these are good rules to follow. If you're reevaluating what you're doing, these are good rules to look back on as you fine-tune your efforts. So kind of the reality here is that our number one product is ourselves. The term brand and personal brand in a service-based industry are somewhat synonymous, and we're going to see that later. And this brand in real estate in particular is rooted in your own identity. So differentiating yourself is differentiating your brand. I know that that's the theme that Sabia, who also comes from an agency background, talking to me about working with agents like yourself to find your niche. And really, there's a great opportunity for you to do. Before I continue on, I'm going to just, say if you have any questions, jump in. I'm going to send you this after, so there's no needs to take notes on this, and I can be available for context. Should you? Sorry? Hello?
I think we need to mute. I shall mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Guys, whoever's I think unmuted, if you can just mute just in case there's sound in the background, that would be great.
Okay. So the number one challenge here is that there are over 55,000 real estate agents in the GTA and GTHA, as you guys well know. If you're a buyer starting out, it's hard to understand where to go. A lot of the business, I would imagine, comes from referrals. Referrals will get you to a certain amount of the way and the goal that you want to get to build a business. But if you want to grow incrementally, you need to really start focusing on your brand. So within those 55,000, you want to ask yourself, how are you different? Why do you provide unique value? Why would a client choose you? Does your brand say that? And that's a big question. I'm assuming that most of you have some branding work done already. But is your brand really communicating the point of difference? Is it really giving the elevator pitch that you would give when you have the opportunity to be in person? I would argue that that's not only difficult to do, but your brands may not be doing it now. And so today I'll cover some fundamentals of some first steps. So really that's about what can you do. So out of today, just kind of 10 things that I'd want you to pull out of this, the things to challenge yourself with. One is to gain an understanding of what a personal brand is and why it's so important. I think you already know a lot of that stuff now. Have a basic understanding of the basic anatomy of the brand. So, you know, you've got a brand spine, and there's about 8 different elements that we'll talk about for you consideration, and does your brand hit your mark? Find out a starting point for creating your brand. I'll take you through a little bit of an exercise of what a brand mark looks like and why, using Walmart as an example. I would want you to take a step to test, challenge, or revise your brand mark. Even bigger than that is probably challenging to write or rewrite your brand story. Brand stories are largely replacing mission statements. Understand the importance of consistency in brand building. People are very good at putting their logo everywhere, but they're not that at making sure there's consistency in things like communication, tone, voice, manner, you know, down to the fonts that you use that really are hallmarks of brand standards that bigger brands and growing companies employ. Prioritize or reprioritize your branding channels and investments. There's so much that you can do, particularly with your online presence. It's tough to do it all. It's tough to do it all well, but I would challenge you to think about doing one thing very, very well. And that's point 8, is pick that one area of focus and commit to an achievable goal and timeline. 9 is feel comfortable asking for help and in what areas to ask. Despite how great you are, there are always people that specialize in stuff like this in the same way that you specialize in what you do as real estate professionals, and real estate professionals operating within a particular niche that's working well for you. And the last thing is challenge how you live your brand and making it a habit. And that really comes back to consistency, activity, and content creation. So any questions there before we jump in? No?
No, I actually wanted to just talk about a little bit, Philip, just kind of what you're saying is, I want to clarify. So guys, you know, we keep thinking about whenever we go into the market, we think we're advertising and marketing houses. I just want your mindset to change a little bit through this presentation and understand that we're actually service oriented, right? We're selling a service. The service is me. The service is you. Like each individual real estate realtor has a service to offer, and to differentiate yourself from other realtors and really dig in deep to find out who you are, what is your strong points, what is your unique selling proposition, will clarify and dictate what your demographic will look like, you know, and it'll really help you brand yourself. And all of this that Phillip is talking about is taking yourself out of the confusion and having a very clear path as to who you service, what you service, and who would be wanting to choose you as the realtor above and beyond anybody else.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you are, at the end of the day, you're transacting houses, but you're selling yourself, particularly not just a competitive environment, but in an environment that's being pressed with people pushing more and more self-serve options that are challenging you on fees and not understanding the value. So yourself as a service provider will be used to enforce fees and enforce choice. So that's a great point. So what is a perfect brand? This is kind of a word cloud that you know, shows the popularity of words around it. These are ones that you already know, but at the end of the day, it has to do with the fact that perception is reality, and personal branding is the conscious and intentional effort to create a perception of yourself by positioning yourself as an authority in an industry, and not just in an industry, but in a niche, which I think is a big part of how agents you operate. Some quotes, you know, if you want to think about it, you know, the one thing that you can say, your brand is what people will say about you when you're not in the room. So think about, you know, the referrals that you'll get from clients. It won't just be the experience of transacting a piece of real estate and the amount of work and diligence that you did, but what are they going to say about you as a person? And what is that impression? And we talk about living a brand and you know, having habits every day. What is that impression that you leave? So if you're out at lunch with you know, 2 clients, a husband and wife, and you leave to go to the restroom after, you know, you've just met them for 15 minutes, what are they going to say? What are they going to say to friends? What are they going to tell people at the end of the transaction? What are they going to say at the beginning of the transaction about you? And that's really where you want to live your brand every day, and make sure that every single interaction with you is at a very, very high standard. It is with consistency, and the way that you speak, the way that you act, the way that you dress. I mean, personal brands back when I started out, and I remember going off to my first job at Microsoft, living with my parents. My mom was making sure my shoes were shined and my hair was combed, which it isn't now. But that was really where personal brand is, and personal appearance, the kind of car you drive. But now with the internet, it has the potential to give small companies a big voice. It's more and more important that you get your brand mark at a minimum to a consistent level. Other interesting quotes that I won't necessarily run through, that really enforce the fact that you need to make a brand a priority and live it every day. It's within your control. And the last thing is know your niche and own it, and start your story from there. Forbes quote I will run through is, and I think that is a great one. Everyone knows from Forbes, I'm sure, is that too many people overvalue what they're not and undervalue what they are. So the downside of what I'm telling you from a personal branding standpoint is it's human nature that the hardest product to market is yourself, because you don't want to seem arrogant or that you're bragging. But you really need to focus on your strengths if you're going to prove and deliver against a niche. A couple of kind of tenets of personal brands versus brands in general. What is the difference? I alluded to this at the beginning. When you're in a service business that is rooted in yourself, personal brands and brands are effectively synonymous, because you are the service, you are the name. So a few points below that. So it's easier than ever to create a personal brand. And that really has to do with, online presence. Personal brands and social media accounts make it easier to create a personal brand and a business brand, and for you to contribute content. Personal brands are much more flexible because it's rooted in your name and the fact that you're driving it, that you can adapt and change your message without the need to change your business. Personal brands can be linked to other brands, and this is probably about the best example within real estate. So if you have Sutton Summit as your brokerage record brand, your branding is going to be beside them, and you're going to be working within an affinity group. So that partnership is allowing all of you, as I think 300 and some realtors that you have, working as one affinity group to create a greater consumer base for your service. So this plays right into personal branding. But the bottom right column, this is where one of the exercises I challenge you to do is that your personal name alone doesn't really state what you do differently. So you need to enforce that proposition with things like a strong tagline and a strong brand story. And following that, you need to continue to create content that's going to increase your reach and enforce that message. So any questions at this point? Nope. So where we're going to talk about today is primarily how you craft your brand, and this is kind of a 101 exercise.
Right. Phillip, can I go back and ask a question regarding the last slide?
Yes.
So this has come up. A few weeks ago I did a training session or webinar with somebody for Google pages, right? And we were talking about also our websites, because all of us, we are all under the, like you said, the Sutton Summit website, and we actually just made a new website for ourselves.
Right.
But we all have individual websites as realtors as well. What do you advise? Like for me, because there is so much of this, what you're talking about in social media, on your websites, everywhere, for you to be interesting and be different from everybody else, it's in my view, it's very important to have some part of your personality showing in that. I have seen that myself. Any post that I put on Instagram, which is purely real estate related, or purely related to the market watch that we produce, I have a lot less likes or a lot less interaction on that post rather than a personal post, right? And you almost have to create that brand yourself, right? What are you really interested in that makes people think about you as a realtor? Is it the mortgage end of it? Is it the renovation end of it? Is it, I don't know, gardening, decoration, redecoration, whatever it may be, that actually leads you into thinking of you as a realtor as well. But in terms of actually having your Google page or your website, what do you think is more beneficial, to have your name in there so that when somebody searches Sibiali, they come to me, or more of a generic name which is associated with real estate as such?
Well, in terms of the name of your website, or in terms
Website
of,
or your Google page? Should it be, best home sales or something like that? Or should it be, the business page should say Sabiali?
well, I think that your name needs to be attached to your name, because when they
Right.
see signs on the lawn,
Mhm.
it needs to be attached to Sutton Summit. It needs to be attached to your personal name. It needs to be attached to your tagline specifically.
Mhm.
For a Google page, you would want to be looking at putting in tag words that are associated with search strings.
Right.
Real estate agents and car dealers are amongst the most competitive Google AdWords to buy. They're very expensive.
Mhm.
That's why I wouldn't necessarily focus on doing a huge amount of AdWord spending in the real estate market, because it's very, very competitive. What I would focus on is using picking one social media channel and doing it well. So I think you need, that one of the next things I'm going to go into is using a Walmart example. I think
Mhm.
you need that as a fundamental built around your name. Having a tagline, which is the bottom right hand box here, tells you tell people what you do the most. It creates that
Mhm.
promise. And then your content needs to be attention getting, compelling, create passion and empathy. And that's really what your brand story does. I don't know
Right.
if it
So
answers it.
there's a huge value. This is, I love what you said, because that's exactly where I was getting to. There's a huge value of using your own name in your website and all of that, which realtors don't realize, because one of the first things Philip mentioned was most of your business is going to come from referrals, or the strongest leads that will come from referrals. And obviously it will be you that they're looking for.
Right.
Right. So I think that's very important, that when somebody searches you, your YouTube channel, your website, everything needs to be linked with your personal name.
Right. Yeah, and that's that. Or you can, some people create a certain handle in absence of a tagline. Like, I live in Mimico in Etobicoke, and the gentleman that's put his stakes in the ground to be Mimico's realtor. I think his kind of brand is, the Mimico man, because
Oh,
his name is a very long Polish name, like Michael Majeski or something I couldn't even spell. So he uses that as a hook, something that has memorability to it. But you can build that memorability into your tagline.
right. Mhm.
I did a tagline for a mortgage broker, and his niche was to do mortgages for people that were undergoing separation and divorce. So he wanted to get very close to divorce lawyers as a lead source. And the tagline that we came up for him uh, was, well, his name was John Panagakos. So again, very tough to spell. So we did separationmortgages.com, and that's what he posts. That's what he posts to. And he's got two websites under his personal name and a mirror site under separationmortgages.com. I think he's just changing it right now, but his tagline speaks to his what he does expertly, which is what we wrote was mortgages when they matter most. So he doesn't do anything any different than a mortgage broker. It's that he has the compassion and understanding that, you're going to come to it at a time where you're upset. We build that into the copy. We create empathy. So those are some of the tricks and tactics that you can use
Right.
depending on.
He's just established his target market right there, right? His demographic is very clear.
Yeah, and I think the very first thing that I wrote in his website is, what we do is not unlike what a traditional mortgage broker do, but we, understand, care, blah 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 blah. So I think he's just rolling it out now, but that's where he did a handle on, and we used that to get him some media around it as well. So, shall we press on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're going to talk today about craft your brand using some examples and talk with the elements of the brand anatomy. This may look simple, but any brand, and particularly very good brands, start at this baseline and they keep viewing it and reviewing it often, and they use this as a checklist before they push any content or do any marketing activities. The second one is how you live your brand, and that's a much longer conversation. I'll introduce the topic of why online channels are important, but it's stuff that you already know. So I'll jump into some basics for brand anatomy. This is really phase one, is where you can start, retool, or reimagine your brand. So create, refine, or rebuild. Phase two, live your brand, is evaluating the consistency, and are you habitually acting as the person who's trying to create an impression, whether it's you in person, what are people going to say about you when you leave the room, or what are people going to say when they see your brand? So we're going to focus on more crafting the brand today. And what I'd like out of the outcome today when we go through this is to take a hard look at your brand and test your brand mark to see, okay, if I buy into what this marketing guy is saying about the anatomy of the brand, does my brand really fit this? Is this really what I'm doing? Is this what the brand's saying? Get somebody else to review it, ask for help, have a third party review it, whether it's a friend, a colleague, or a former client. And the second would be writing, challenging, or rewriting your brand story. And that's what you said, Sophia, when you go into your personal webpage, you tell people what you do, but it's more than just telling them what you do. You need to create a rationale, you need to rationalize why you do it and why you do it well, or why you do it better than somebody else, or why it's a logical destination for you. Okay. So the anatomy of the brand, kind of 8 core things here. It's not unlike the human anatomy, believe it or not. And it's kind of combined to these 8 things. So in the same way, you've got an anatomical chart here. In the brand platform, you've got a brand purpose, brand promise of your positioning, your essence, your value proposition, personality, brand values, and then the brand story. Again, one of the more important things. So the brand purpose is really your why. So what are you doing beyond just selling stuff? So you mentioned right at the beginning, you're not just selling houses, you're selling yourself. So what is it you're selling? Real estate agents are usually focused on service or a niche demographic. How can you come into that there's something more meaningful than speaks really to you? So think about that, start there. Positioning is where you're going to be versus the competitive set. And again, in a very competitive and frankly crowded market, that's difficult. And that's where you really need to challenge what your niche is. And tied to that is your value proposition. So what are they going to get tangibly that they won't get with others when they do business with you? What are those things? So in the separation mortgage example, mortgages when they matter most. The tangibles that we talk about there go beyond the, once people are intrigued or captured by that brand, it goes into explain that, yes, we understand we're here to put our arm around your shoulder, but we also talk about some of the financial challenges that are associated with creating a mortgage related to your separation and divorce, that you may want to keep your monthly income up by creating a higher lump sum payment when you're doing your divorce settlement, and that will give you the ability to buy a higher value property. And we get into those tangible benefits beyond the tagline. So that's something you'd want to explain once you capture people with your mark, which would include a tagline. The brand values, this is really about, think of this as close to your personal values. What are those tenets that they want to take away from you? Is it honesty, timeliness, over delivery? Those are pretty generic ones. Think about what you can really, really do for people and build that into the values of your brand. That will roll right into the promise. What do you want people to know or remember about your brand? So separation mortgages when they matter most, people will remember separation mortgages because it's a new category as they understand it. They'll remember that mortgages when they matter most, that you're under a very stressful time in your life, that there are financial challenges. The traditional banks are fear uncertainty in the mortgage market. Those are things that they'll associate with that brand as one example. The essence is really tied to your tagline. That would be the first line of your brand story, typically. The personality is really the tone and manner that you would use. So you think of the personality of a brand like Mercedes versus a brand like Kia. And the language and even down the words and the level of vocabulary would vary brand by brand, and that would have to do with the target they're trying to reach and how they want you to feel about the brand. So Mercedes wants to be, established, quality, precision, curated, all these different things, where Kia wants to be more fun and approachable and the love of, driving or where the vehicle can take you. Mercedes has a whole different audience. And that's a very important thing to focus on when you go ahead and write the last piece, which is your brand story. And this is, once you have a strong mark that will draw people in, make them read more online, this is where you want to have on your Google page or on your personal website. That's where you want to start. And that is, I think I mentioned twice right now, brand stories are replacing mission and vision statements online. You probably remember them from 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, and the brand story is being used by just about every company. So those are the components of the brand anatomy. Any questions on that?
If I may, Philip, I just want to make sure that we're very clear about how important this is. This is a thought process. This is a mapping for your next 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, right?
Mhm.
And it's Mercedes is you have arrived, Kia is you're going places,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They're both completely valid uh, arguments to have, and both totally valid personalities to have, if you want to call it. The key is that I think we jump into this business and we kind of skim through it. Okay, let's make the cards. Let's make our boards. Let's do the website. There's really no thought process. But if everybody can spend some time trying to figure out that skeleton, what are we going to build on? Because the key is that we are not big corporations. We
Right.
don't have millions of ad fund dollars to spend or
Mhm.
marketing dollars to spend. If we have 200 or 300 or $500 budget right now, presently, it should be added on to the right place on the skeleton. So the skeleton should always remain the same so that you can, going forward over a period of next 3 years or 4 years, develop your brand to where it needs to be polished. But it has to be a vertical growth, right? If we're doing horizontal, we do one thing, we do a logo, not really thought about what that logo is talking about. Then we turn around and we start making our business cards and we don't really like that logo, so we drop that logo. It's used in one place but not another place, you know.
Right.
But this actually will give you a really good base of who you are, what you are, whether you're a Kia or a Mercedes. But then you run with it for the next, and this has to have longevity. If
Right.
your branding plan doesn't have, or branding anatomy that like Phillip is saying is does not have a longevity in the next 5, 10, 15 years to grow to your business to where it really needs to be, then it's going to be waste of time and money.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it. I mean, people jump into a lot of businesses really quickly. Real estate's an example that comes to mind I've because I've done work there and there are so many agents and it is tough to differentiate. But just about any business, people usually jump right in quickly, make some money, and then when they want to grow, they want to come back to it. I'm saying that
Mhm.
starting, or if this is a time, if you're on this call because you're reevaluating it, is be diligent about the way that you go through these steps. And I'm trying to leave you with something as kind of a framework. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Um,
his mic is on. If they can turn it off, please.
So it is your brand. There are no rules necessarily, but here are just some things to think about. So be focused, genuine, tell a story, consistency, be ready to fail. And 3 slides ago, we talked about one of the advantages of personal brands is that you can change your message without changing your business name. It's rooted in your name. Have a positive impact. Follow a successful example. Build a brand that you actually live. Let other people tell your story.
सेकंड टाइम अंदर किया अंदर नहीं है लेकिन वो बिल्कुल
Sorry, Phillip, give me 1 second. I just need to find out.
अच्छा आप कितनी जल्दी लगाते हैं इसको लगा
काफी जल्दी लगा
क्यों
Saman, do you mind turning your mic off?
ये जो सेकंड टाइम
Saman? Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let other people tell your story, and what that means is probably the most important thing in this set of 10 pieces to remember is that's really memorability. So if going back to separation mortgages example, I think we've set that gentleman up over to him to deploy, that he has a memorable story, that if you read the first 2 paragraphs of his copy, which I think is coming out soon, as I said, you would remember and you'd be able to repeat what his proposition is. So when you write what your niche is or your tagline or your brand story, make sure that it's repeatable. So people obviously know the term elevator pitch. Your brand story in a way is the elevator pitch for yourself. So you want something that's memorable, that's something that's digestible, and somebody that can retell. So, Sabia is this, right? So I would say about her from, had a couple interactions. She comes from a large agency world. She's had great success in becoming a broker of record. She works with 300 agents focused in this real estate market, so really, really quick things. So what are those memorable things to say about yourselves? And everybody has them. And back to the quote from Forbes is don't focus on, on what you don't do well or what you don't think you do well. Focus on what you do well and place value in that. So an example, this is really a brand obviously everybody knows. So I just want to run through the elements of a brand mark. So these are the basic things. So memorable and logical name. Walmart was obviously related to the brand Sam Walton from Bentonville, Arkansas, who started as a small town store. In this case, it would be your name. The propositional tagline, we'll touch back on that. A color palette and font, emotive iconography. So for Walmart, the emotive iconography here, and when we talk about brand standards down in this corner here, that is something you need to use. You need to make sure you use the same font, same colors. You want the representation logo with tagline, logo without tagline as a way of getting memorability of your brand. So when you want to write your tagline, I mean, most people, if they were to describe Walmart, they would just say that, it's a box store which gives you a better price. So Walmart's done here is that they wanted to create something, some of the themes we've been talking about is what's different about them, or what is the promise that they have, or what is the value proposition. It's not just about saving money or being cheap. It's about saving money and living better. So they are selling a better life because you can get more stuff. You can get more food. You can get more stuff for your children. You can, get camping equipment, all these different things. They're selling a better lifestyle through low prices. So those are, this is an example. One of the things from the last slide was follow an example, but this is an identity of a mark. Their emotive iconography, it's something you can choose or not to choose. Does anyone have any guesses of what that mark is representing? The yellow? Anyone?
White star.
Well, where it comes from are two things. It's supposed to represent the sun, so bright and shiny and happy. And it represents a power button. So empowering people. Like if you look at an icon in many devices, it's similar to the power button, but just a little fun fact. So there's a standard. So think about these things using Walmart as an example, very different business, but that's almost the best thing to have. So imagine this used in different businesses. Here are some taglines just as examples. These are easily searchable if you search best taglines in the business. Nike, Just Do It, Apple, Think Differently, Dunkin' Donuts, America runs on Dunkin', Think Outside the Bun, Taco Bell is getting away from people's habitual buying of hamburgers. L'Oreal, Because You're Worth It, another great example is how do you get people to pay more money for beauty supplies? It's by putting the value in self rather than I'm not just buying makeup, I'm investing in myself. Panasonic, Ideas for Life. That allows them to extend just beyond selling televisions, electronics, or stereos to get into the refrigerator market, appliance market they have. My own brand, Create Market Demand, can be read as three core things that I do or one line together. So it's creativity. Here's Halstead Real Estate in the States. This came from a print ad. Our agents of change will move you. And then here's one from a Sotheby's agent that I worked with that sells investment properties where he says invested in your real estate. So these are good things, following a good example to look at as you embark on that exercise. The good news is that just like Walmart, here are some of the evolutions of Walmart since the 60s. So good brands evolve, but not too often, but find a better starting place. So if you have a brand now, it's linked in your name, don't be afraid to change it. Just don't change it too often. And that really, is kind of saying, put the diligence in. So I would challenge you as a step one is to create or challenge your brand anatomy today. Go through those 8 steps. It's not that hard. You can call Spia for help. You could call me for help and put that a challenge and create the Walmart example you have from this slide for yourself. The most important thing is getting started with the best information that you have. So any questions there?
So this is really interesting how I think the 62 to the 64 was very true to what it is today.
Yeah.
Right. And then they tried something funky. Someone from, I don't know, the down south decided to come in and help them with their branding.
Yeah.
Right. And then it has developed really nicely from 92 to 2008. The star has actually gone to the end of it. It's still that bright star. Mm-hmm. Right. But from the middle, it's popped up on the side and made it a little bit more modern and fast. And like you said, the thought of the button, I think, is introduced at the last end.
Yeah,
maybe
that's a
find it.
that's a good catch with the star.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does change. I actually went down when I started in the packaged goods business, and we heard about this retailer who wanted to sell grocery products, and they sent the new guy down to go and call on them in Bentonville, Arkansas, which was a 3-hour drive from any airport. And we walked into the office in this little small town of Bentonville, Arkansas, myself and another gentleman, and I'm 25. We walked in the front door, and the security guard grabbed our tie and cut them off and stacked them on the wall. You can't wear ties to the Walmart office. So that was a part of their brand personality way back in 1990.
Yeah, discount city, right?
Yeah, well, don't come in here. Don't come into Bentonville with a tie. Don't walk. Sam Walton never wore a tie, and already a billionaire back in the 90s, he still drove the same old pickup truck. And now after his death, it's mounted up in the middle of the town square. So it's kind of neat.
Mhm.
So, okay, just an exercise, we talk about positioning. I'm not going to run through all this, but here's some kind of structures. So first, understand your market. So across the top, you think about a highly relevant description, shared attribute of your target customers. So facts about your target customers, things that are quantitative about them. Is it age? Is it income? Is it any unique? Is it the language they speak? Is it male versus female buyer? Is it people with young children? You could call the quantitative things here the demographics that you work well and successfully in, and where you've got a lot of good case studies and customer references and customer stories. How can they segment them? So you may do very well within an audience of downsizers, but how can you segment those downsizers? Are they downsizers that are downsizing to free up cash towards a retirement fund? Are they downsizers that are downsizing because they want to spend more time at a secondary investment property, be it a cottage or a property down south? Look at different segments, and that's how you can craft your message within a brand. Look at what makes each segment unique. Where can you find them? Are they geographically based? Is it a target that you can look to, down the road as you become more sophisticated, buy online? Understand how they shop. Understand what's important to them. That could be aspects of your service, and understand how they want to be spoken to. So you would speak to a baby boomer probably in a very different way that you would speak to a millennial. That is, go back to the Mercedes and Kia example, and that would play right into your tagline as well. So from that, you think about an individual or secondary benefit, promise, or conviction you can make, and that your tagline should require you to communicate a condition, a promise, or an outcome that's related to that benefit, that speaks to them in a way that's consistent with the language, tone, and voice and manner of how they want it spoken to. Again, baby boomer versus millennial as an oversimplification. So brand stories, that's kind of the last piece of kind of crafting your brand. I talked about this third or fourth time now, saying they're replacing mission statements. This is so important. So imagine you have your brand, your tagline, and that gets their attention, and they go to your website or they meet you in person. Back to your consistency, this is the story that you need to tell them. So it should have, it's the backbone of any successful company, particularly for online companies now, where you don't have a brick and mortar store for them to necessarily be represented. You may have a real estate office that you share, but more and more you're discovered online, and people start their shopping journey online. So that's what they're going to find down. And that's where they're going to start to find you more and more. You want to create this hard to pin down feeling, that authentically and consistently comes through about yourself, and it should capture their attention. It should create understanding and or empathy of your situation. It should compel them to act. So this is where you need to, through your brand anatomy exercise, be very honest about your story and what makes you unique, and that can create empathy. That can enforce your raison d'etre for serving that market in a way that nobody else can. This would be, I think I've got that down as your step 2 challenge. So step 1 would be to look at your brand anatomy or your mark from Walmart example. I would hope out of today, challenge yourself to look at your brand story and write your brand story. Okay. Where are we going here? I'm going backwards. So that's really how you craft your brand, how you live your brand. That's how you evolve and compound your branding, and that's habit versus act. You're already living your brand today, but look at whether you can do it more fully, more consistently, and that's going to be a way that you can build reach and build referrals.
If I can jump in for a quick second,
Mhm.
if you've done the first one true to yourself, if you really dug in deep and you've crafted your brand according to what you really are, which is always more sellable than a made up thing, then the second one will flow in very easily. It'll be
Absolutely.
almost automatic because you stayed really true to yourself. You spend the time to really understand it
Yeah.
fully, and then polish it and shine it and bring it out.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I actually, because I don't know you, but if I was engaged with you, I would start by doing an interview and hear your brand story. And from that, I would create your mark and tagline and then write your brand story that would pay off that mark. So you have the benefit of knowing your story, but you're absolutely right. If your story is authentic, then that should play into your brand. And that's how a branding agency would go about understanding you and creating that for you. So that's a very good point. I'm just ending off on this because it would be, you know, a miss if I didn't. You already know how to act like a professional in person, or else you wouldn't be in business. That's absolutely the case of anyone that has any success in life. But to exponentially build your business, you need to build your reach and present your brand online. But you already know this too. The question is, are you doing it? And are you doing it well? And in most cases, people are not. People will spend money on the things that they know they have to do, that has been proven to work, like door hangers, signs, bench advertising, depending on what your budget is. And the online presence is almost universally one of the things that people do not do well. They use properties to sell their listings to demonstrate their value. That's a good piece, but I do not see a ton of agents that have done the rigor of creating a brand story and creating something that differentiates themselves in, again, a market of 55,000. So challenge yourself in this case. Stats that you already know. People already know almost everybody's online. 99% of millennials, 90% of boomers begin their search online. They all use social media, but the point that I want you to take away from here is the very top one. So you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And more importantly, is it a bad online presence? Maybe worse than no presence at all. So if somebody referred you, check out, Phillip Stainton, the realtor, and they searched me and I had some very poorly done, low quality, not well thought through website, then they may say, okay, no, that doesn't really fit with me. That is not a high quality brand. That is not a professional, and it may actually hurt you. An old adage, if you look at tier one consulting businesses or ad agencies, they're all located in the highest dollar per square foot real estate. They have marble in the lobbies. They have, the most expensive finishings in commercial fit outs. And they're not selling anything tangible. They're selling a service, but they invest in it because it's a demonstration of success. Most real estate agents that I know probably spend a little extra money on driving a nicer car or buying, different clothes to make the image of success and image marketing. That's important, but a bad online presence is, I will say, is worse than no presence at all. The internet is the great equalizer, giving small companies or individuals the potential to have a big voice. I'm not going to play it now, but I always remember when I explained social media and the reach of the internet. It's the 1980 commercial from Heather Locklear. That's I told two friends, and I told two friends, and I told two friends. And really, that's what the power of the online marketplace can do. But in order to be successful, you have to have the right voice and tell the right story. And this genuine storytelling is the biggest difference between small, authentic, and big corporate companies that try to compete. And if you can tell that story well, you're going to differentiate yourself better than even the large real estate firms or agents with large agents under them, because you've come at it with the right tools. So have a rational, authentic, and defensible brand and brand story, and that will be the spine of all the activities that follow. So again, those are the two exercises we leave with today. Last thing is get started or retool. Define yourself well, or somebody else will, where I started. I challenge you to set one goal from our discussion today, to hold yourself to it, and to ask yourself for help. So I'm happy to be contacted with questions if you want, but do we want to take any questions at this point?
Sure. Guys, do you have any questions? You're more than welcome to turn your mics on at this point. Anybody?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Philip. This was, I think, quite enlightening. I love, thinking about things outside the box and really, getting out of it's so hard when you have clients and you're looking for homes and you're in this crazy market to take a breather and actually, self-align yourself.
Mhm.
So sessions like this are very, very helpful.
Yeah, you have to, and my last word would be you have to take the time to do it. You're your most important product, and you're always the last one that you market, and you'll serve your clients first, which you have to do. But you have to make the time. You have to find the investments. Clients that I've worked with in real estate, almost, well, I should say 100% of them say, I wish I did this sooner. So they got to the point where they had extra money, and then they came to it and they said, imagine, I can't even imagine how much bigger I would have been now in the last 5 years than if I, had to wait and save the money. They would have reprioritized things. So that's one thing I would challenge you with is that
it's servicing your business, right? You keep running your car without oil change and service, it's going to start dragging. But this is, you have to keep servicing your business, keep putting the marketing dollars in the right place.
yeah, the old adage of the shoemaker's son. The shoemaker's son always has the worst shoes. So on that, I will close. I will send this to you, Savia, and
Thank you so much.
Send it out to your people. Okay.
Okay,
All right, guys.
perfect.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now. Bye.